you're not our most famous old boy. I go, really, who is? And she goes, Osama Bin Laden. I went, all right, fair enough. Half my life would be with future members of Radiohead and the Tory cabinet. And then I'd go back to a civil war. They chased us in a little pickup truck, jumped out in front of our car, pulled out a handgun and forced us back to have more coffee. He goes, I believe Iran is a desert country, sir. I don't think they do any skiing there. I don't know who's been to the room where they're conceived, but I have.
The place
if you're
where the
staying
magic
in
happens.
room 36 in Hotel Inglaterra, hello.
Dom Joly, welcome to the Travel Diaries podcast. It is so lovely to see you today. How are
Holly
you doing?
Rubenstein, thank you very much for having me on. Apparently you can see me. I'm so annoyed. I like doing podcasts where I don't have to look like anything. I can just talk.
I know, it's this new
But
this
now,
new change.
really, podcasts are the new television, aren't they?
Well, how is it always being introduced with your full name? Is that a
As
weird
in Dom
thing?
Joly?
Yeah, Dom Joly.
That's actually a really good question. Well, firstly, Jolly's a weird name to have as a comedian, isn't it? I mean, people honestly ask me, is that your real name? And I go, yeah, Mr. Tickle was taken, so I went for Jolly. But also, when I was going up a lot to do Trigger Happy and stuff, and my kids were young and they were at school, Parker, my daughter, came to me once and she goes, Dad, are you Dom Joly? And I said, what? And she goes, are you Dom Joly? Because all the kids at school are saying, is your dad Dom Joly?
Just one word.
Yeah, it was one word.
Yeah.
And so she thought, so I was dad at home, but then I went to London and became this thing called Dom Joly.
Like Madonna.
Yeah. So I suppose, you've made it if you've got one name, haven't you? And my name is
Has basically become
it's
that.
become one thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of Dom Joly. It's sort of another word for twat, really. So it's fine, yeah.
You are one of the most travelled people that we've had on the podcast.
Well, that's quite a high honour for the Travel Diaries.
The internet says over 108 countries. Does that sound about right?
Well, it's exactly 108.
Okay.
I know you're not
That's
supposed
precise.
to count, and it's incredibly naff. And I'm annoyed that things like I've been to all 50 states. That doesn't count, So because that to me feels like 50 countries.
I think so. Yeah, 'cause they're so diverse.
But yeah, no, I have been to a lot. I mean, this is perfect for me. I love this. I love talking about travel. I'm a travel bore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And because obviously we all got to know you first through comedy, but travel has now been a huge focus in your life.
It's pretty much, I mean, if I could do anything, I would I write travel books, and that is the thing, I think, the single thing that gives me the most pleasure is deciding I like to travel for a reason, so I sort of think of a theme. So my first book was The Dark Tourist, for instance, and I nicked that wholly off a guy called P.J. O'Rourke, who used to be the Rolling Stones foreign correspondent, which has got to be the greatest job in the world. And he wrote a book in the 80s called Holidays in Hell. And I remember he went to Lebanon, and he just turned up in Lebanon. And it was called A Ramble Through Lebanon. He just sort of wandered around. And he nailed Lebanon, which is a very complicated place to define, much better than people that have been there for years. And I always just thought, because I grew up in Lebanon, which we'll probably get to, and it was a place that everyone thinks, oh my God, it's a war zone. But actually, it looks like California. I can go skiing. It's the best food in the world. I can go to the beach. So I always used to wonder, are there other places in the world that are equally nice? And so I did that book called The Dark Tourist. So, and I went off on holidays to places you wouldn't normally go to holiday to. So yeah, I love travel.
That is something that we're definitely going to come on to.
Sorry, that was
I
a very long-winded answer.
No. The dark tourism, I think, is absolutely kind of fascinating, and actually something that we as people who love travel should be embracing and shining a light on, because ultimately it's shining a light on the places that deserve it, need it.
It's interesting because, firstly, when I started writing for things like the Sunday Times, places like that won't let you do dark tourism now because you can't travel write in newspapers or anywhere that isn't, if it's on the red list, you're not allowed to fly there and you can't get travel insurance. It's no interest to them because there's no PR or sponsors. So that's killed that a little bit. And also there is an element of dark tourism where you've got to be careful you're not going into, you're not going there just to sort of gloat on other people's unhappiness.
Yeah.
But I think there is a kind of responsible dark tourism.
Yeah.
I think I'm a responsible dark tourist. I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we get onto that, we'll go back to the very beginning, because
if we must.
We must, because our Travel Diaries chapters start with chapter 1.
Oh, well done. Okay.
And obviously, as you might expect.
Yeah, that was the foreword. A little long, but no one reads foreword, so it's fine.
And we begin with your earliest childhood travel memory. What would that be?
My earliest probably... So I grew up in Lebanon for reasons way too complicated to explain. And ironically, back in the day, we used to go... My dad was, I think, a frustrated archaeologist. He took over the family business, but deep down, he was kind of obsessed with Freya Stark, and his middle name was Leonard, after Leonard Woolley, who was an archaeologist. He was really into that, and we loved Syria. And so we used to drive into Syria at least 3 times a year. So I think my very first travel moment I remember was driving. We'd go on a family expedition. There'd be 3 cars, the dogs, everything. We'd drive over the hills above Beirut, down to the Bekaa Valley, into Syria. There used to be an amazing border crossing just north of Baalbek, where we'd have to wait on a bridge while you went through the sort of not silly, but the long bureaucratic visa process. And I remember sitting on that bridge looking into the river, and there was a snake in the river, tiny snake. But I remember thinking, that's so exciting. Yeah. I couldn't get my head round snake in a river. And then we went into Syria, and we'd always end up in Palmyra, which I know people call Palmyra, but it's Palmyra, and which is probably one of my favorite places in the world. It's this incredible oasis town, and it's got an Arab castle on the hill. It's got beautiful Roman remains. Right. And we used to stay at this hotel called Hotel Zenobia. And Zenobia was kind of like the Syrian Boadicea. She fought the Romans. And Hotel Zenobia was just an awful, very basic Syrian hotel, but we loved it. And so that's my first memories, is Palmyra, really.
And what kind of a place is Palmyra? Is it a rural location, or is it city? I can't picture it.
It's bang in the middle of the Syrian desert.
Oh, in the desert, right.
It's right in the middle of the desert. It's an oasis town. It used to be, back in the day, sort of on the cusp of about 3 different empires. So it was a place where people met, and it's a massive, just imagine a sort of a small oasis town with an enormous Roman ruins all around it. It's so beautiful. Yeah. ISIS, when they took over Palmyra, started blowing up some of the
I was going to ask, temples. Is it intact at all?
Yeah, it's still pretty intact. They did blow up quite a lot of stuff, but it was it still is, I think, one of the most astonishing places in the world, yeah.
And what would you do when you were there?
So we would drink Syrian beer, which is fantastic, which we would also use as shampoo. For some reason, it was really good as shampoo. And then we'd drive out into the desert. We had this place. I did a documentary, actually, called Dom Joly's Excellent Adventure, and I went back there. There were these amazing cliffs, and at the base of the cliffs, you had to climb up. There were these caves, and we used to go. We'd have a picnic there, and I wrote my name in that cave when I was a kid, and so I went back to try and find it for no reason, but I did find it.
You did?
And then I also remember that we'd always go at Easter, or this might be wrong for horse racing fans, but whenever the Grand National is. And so I remember driving up a big sand dune to try and get the BBC World Service to listen to the Grand National. So we were kind of odd like that. But saying a sand dune makes you think that the Syrian desert's like the Sahara, and it's not. It's actually it's not sand, it's more kind of rubble. I don't know.
Okay, right. More gritty.
Gritty, yeah. It's a gritty desert, but I love it. And then there's a massive salt lake just outside, or salt flat outside Palmyra. So I remember playing football on that and playing cricket on that. We were very expat family, you know.
Oh, well, yes and no, in that most expats, I guess, don't go on their holidays to Syria. So I guess it's quite...
certainly not now. I mean, the irony is that we used to leave Lebanon to go to Syria for, to get away from the war, and to have peace and quiet. Now it's, Syria's all right now, but it's the flip side then. The one thing I really, really remember, and actually it's probably it happened really early on, and actually it was the thing that sort of excited me the most, but also still gives me anxiety dreams. We drove out of Palmyra, and I think we were going to the Salt Lake, and we were halfway there, and there was a Bedouin encampment, and obviously Bedouin move around, and they just put their tents down, and they're incredibly hospitable. Yeah. And we had gone to the lake, we'd played cricket or something, and we were driving back. It was getting dark, and we had to get back to Palmyra because it's quite tricky to get back before it was dark. And they stopped us and invited us in for coffee. And we said, of course, because you don't say no. And we went in and we sat, but they just went on and on and on. And finally, we just said, we've got to go, and they wouldn't really let us go. And we had to just insist in the end. And they chased us in a little pickup truck, jumped out in front of our car, pulled out a handgun, and forced us back to have more coffee. I really remember this. And all I remember is my mum having a box of sweets, saying, "Give them a sweet." So I remember being terrified, but also thinking, God, this is like, because I read Tintin at the time, and I thought, this is straight out of Tintin, it's great. Yeah.
Why do you think they pulled out the gun?
Do you know what? It's very odd, because this is like promulgating...
It's surreal.
It's also promulgating a lot of myths about Arabs, which is not true. You know, it's not everywhere you go that they got guns and stuff, but it's just a very weird... I don't know, they just... Yeah. They were just
really
very keen on their coffee.
They just hadn't spoken to other people for a very long time.
Do you know what? I genuinely don't know why they did that. But they didn't shoot us. That was nice.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you grew up in Lebanon, spent your childhood in Beirut. And it was this
Above Beirut, yeah.
Above Beirut?
Yeah.
In the kind of suburbs?
No, in the hills above Beirut.
In the hills,
yeah.
Wow.
So we were at 520 metres. And our house, so it was in the Maronite Hills, in a place called Ain Saadi, which is below Brumana, which is the big kind of hilltop retreat. And yeah, we had a terrace that just overlooked all of Beirut, which allowed us essentially a kind of front row panoramic view of the entire Civil War.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
Well, it's always odd being asked that question because it was just my reality. So unless I could dip into the multiverse, I don't know what it wouldn't be like. But it was very strange. I mean, Lebanon was, and still is, I think, my favourite country on earth. I cannot explain to people how beautiful Lebanon is for such a small country. I wrote a book called The Downhill Hiking Club in which I walked the length of Lebanon. So I know it really well. And it's such a small country, but topographically, it's so varied. You know, you've got these beautiful, what used to be Phoenician city-states, you know, Byblos, and Beirut and Sidon and Tyre. You've got the Mediterranean. You've got Beirut itself, just a magnificent city. And then you've got hills going straight up to really high mountains where you can ski. Where I grew up, it looked like the south of France. Ski. Pine forests. Yeah. The food is just, I think, exceptional. And then you go over those hills and down into the Bekaa Valley, which is this incredible place where Romans made wine. And you've got Baalbek, one of the great Roman sites of the world. Yeah. I mean, I should be working for the Lebanese Tourist Board. I love Lebanon, but my parents grew up there in idyllic times. You know, my mum didn't grow up there. She went out there as part of the Foreign Office, but the 50s, the 60s, it was like the Switzerland of the Middle East, the Paris of the Middle East, all those cliches. Incredible place.
Very chic.
Very chic, very cool, very like international jet club, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Civil War hit in 75 when I was 8. So I always felt I'd been like, my brothers and sisters had all like grown up and gone to school there in the great times. And just as I was getting there, this thing happened and it was just vicious and it ripped the country apart. And so I had a very weird childhood from then on because half the time would be me stuck in our lovely house, but stuck while this war raged around us. And then I'd be sent off to boarding school at 7, you know, which is really normal in England. And so I'd sort of half my life would be with future members of Radiohead and the Tory cabinet. And then I'd go back to a civil war. So a lot of that has probably got to do with my weird take on life.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, did England seem kind of impossibly tame in comparison to your life there?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, there was a part of me, you know, I would get really worried at times. I got very anxious because it's horrible, just constantly being shelled and like being frightened. But on the other hand, I think it's a little bit what war correspondents get, or people that, soldiers almost. You become almost an adrenaline junkie that even though it's not good for you and it's not good for the nerves and it's worrying, there's something incredibly thrilling about living in that sort of atmosphere. And so coming to England in the 70s, I remember the first place I went to was Cheltenham, where I now live. And it was for my granny's 90th birthday, and it was pouring with rain. And Cheltenham back then was honestly like God's waiting room, is where people came back from the Empire to die. And I remember just looking around this place thinking, if I lived here, I'd kill myself. And now I live in Cheltenham, which has changed.
Now, what does that mean? What would a therapist say?
It would say that I was probably deep down looking for some kind of security. Or more importantly, I think, because I don't believe therapists because they're idiots, I think what I was doing was trying to give my kids a secure stability that I didn't have. And sometimes I look at them and think, you cosseted little, you know, you've had too easy a life. But you know,
And famously, you were at the same high school, a pacifist Quaker. Was it a junior school actually?
Pacifist, no, it was
Quaker.
A Quaker high school.
Quaker high school.
Called Brumana High School.
Where Osama Bin Laden also attended.
Yes. So I can't really talk about travel without that coming up. And it's fair enough, because I looked this up the other day. I was looking up something about me because I was trying to write something, and I wondered what ChatGPT would say about me. One of the first things it said was that I went to school with Osama Bin Laden and that I'd been dining out on it for 15 years. So even ChatGPT thinks I've been overdoing it. But you know what? If you find out you went to school with Osama Bin Laden, you're going to talk about it.
Of course.
When I did that documentary and I went into Syria, the idea for that was to go back and look at my youth and then go off into Syria. And when we arrived in Lebanon, the director said, I know you went to school in Lebanon before you got sent off to boarding school, so we thought it'd be fun if we went and had a look round your school. We've had a fixer, he's organised it and stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought that'd be great. And my school is beautiful. It was like half an hour above our house in a place called Brumana, which is where people from Beirut, mostly Christians, went up in the summer because it was cooler, and it's a very beautiful place. Mm-hmm. And I think in about 1865, some Quakers from Darlington, don't ask me why, decided to build this beautiful Quaker school called Brumana High School in the hills above Beirut. I have no idea what they were doing there, but they did. Yeah. And they set it up. So it was an English high school, but sort of run along American high school lines. Mm-hmm. And it went from about the age of 2 to 18.
Right.
And when I got there, I was walking around, filming. There's nothing better than going back to your old school with a film crew. It just makes it look like you've made it. And I'm wandering around giving it the big I am. And suddenly this really angry woman starts running towards us across the tennis courts. And she's screaming, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Who's this?" Turns out it's the headmistress. And of course the fixer, the fixer had just done a very Lebanese thing, taken the $500 and just buggered off like he hadn't done anything. So they had no idea who we were.
Oh, God.
So I tried to explain. I said, "I'm really sorry. I'm a comedian in England. We're making this documentary and I went to school here. So, I thought it'd be quite fun." She goes, "Why?" And I go, "Well, I'm an old boy." She goes, "Who cares?" And I go, "Well, and I got a little bit hissy. I was like, "Well, I'm probably your most famous old boy, to be honest." Yeah. And she just looked at me like I was something on the bottom of her shoe. She goes, "You're not our most famous old boy." I go, "Really? Who is?" And she goes, "Osama Bin Laden." I went, "All right, fair enough. You win." But then so many questions, because they now deny he went there, which you would, because...
So you don't have any recollection of him being there?
No. I mean, like, people ask me, like, were you mates? No, because I wasn't mates.
He was 6. Older, yeah.
I was 6, he was
older,
18.
Yeah.
It was 1 year. He didn't put his arm around me and, like, take me around the playground, pointing at tall buildings, going, "Soon, Dom, soon, we will do great things." No, not at all. No. But I'm like, Quakers are pacifists.
Yes.
Like, this is, I mean, you can imagine why they're not keen to tell people he went there. Imagine what do you say to prospective parents coming round? Maybe you have heard of some of our more famous alumni. Dom Joly, Osama Bin Laden. It's a terrible failure of the Quaker pacifist schooling system.
Does it, in your travels, has it kind of shaped the way that you view these like political labels when you go to countries?
In what sense?
Well, in the sense, like you say, the irony of going to a pacifist school.
Well, I mean, less pacifist. I mean, religion in itself is just the most ridiculous thing in the world. And everywhere I go, there's a prevalent religion and they all kind of pretty much say the same thing, and they all pretty much are after the same kind of God and mostly as the cause of most problems. So I'm very much not a religious person.
Right.
I'm not anti-religion, but I just can't be bothered. And it's so obvious to me how religion came about that I'm astonished anyone believes in it. But if they want to, that's great, if it gives you solace. But no, it's odd. The problem it's really given me is going to America. I mean, going to America was hard enough for me anyway, being born in Beirut. If you look me up online, I'm a comedy terrorist, did a show called Trigger Happy.
Oh, God.
Now, because I've traveled so much, I've been to North Korea, Libya, Iran, Lebanon. They looked me up. I went to school with Osama Bin Laden. I mean, I get bent over in immigration, before I've even touched ground. So that's the worst thing. Yeah, don't go to school with Osama Bin Laden if you want to go to America.
What do they? So really, at the border control, they're on you.
Well, so when 9/11 happened, Bush put in this thing where basically it didn't matter, because I'm British, totally British, but if you're born in one of, I think, 14, the sort of axis of evil countries, you were taken aside and taken for ages. I got to a stage where there were two bits. One where I was coming into Washington, D.C., and the woman took me aside, and she looks through all my stuff and looks online and stuff. She goes, I see here you speak French. I said, yeah. She goes, why do you speak French? And I go, why? I don't know. All I could think about was that Bill Hicks sketch where he's reading a book and the waitress in a Waffle House, and the waitress comes up and says, why are you reading a book? He goes, I've been asked what I'm reading, but not why I'm reading. I guess I don't want to be a Waffle House waitress, So that was quite good. But the worst one was I landed in Dallas, not Dulles, but Dallas, and the guy. I have 2 British passports. One because I go to politically incompatible countries, and you have to remember to take the good one to America, not the one with all the bad ones.
All the stamps,
and
yeah.
I took the wrong one to America. So, of course, this guy opens it up. First thing he sees is Iran, yeah? Very topical. He goes, Iran, you've been to Iran. Now, I went to Iran for my book, The Dark Tourist, because I wanted to go skiing in Iran. I thought that was a great story. And he goes, why did you go to Iran, sir? And so I thought I could explain I'm a travel writer, I was doing a story, but you don't want to, So in the end I said, well, I went on a skiing holiday, and you could see this guy's little pea brain thinking, I've got one, like that. He goes, I believe Iran is a desert country, sir. I don't think they do any skiing there. So I had to explain to him, and it took about 4 hours. Being a travel writer of any form, if you go to anywhere interesting, you are the bane of all immigration people. It's the irony that you love traveling so much and yet no one likes you. I found it. I was banned at one stage from both Israel and Libya. Libya because I'd been to Israel, and Israel because I'd been to Libya. I'm like, make your fucking mind up. Sorry, I don't know if we can swear, but yeah.
The second chapter of our Travel Diaries is the first place you fell in love with it. Now, it feels like, obviously, Lebanon was your
Lebanon
first
doesn't
love.
Count, though.
No, because you grew up there. So
yeah, I mean, Lebanon is my first love, my ever love, my always love. It really is, and not the one that got away. So Lebanon, but I take that as a kind of side one. I think the first place I remember falling in love with was Rome. We went to Rome quite early, and weirdly, I've only found too much detail, but I was conceived in Rome. One of my middle names is Romulus, and I was conceived in room 36 of Hotel Inglaterra at the base of the Spanish Steps. Too much detail from my mum, but I have been to the room just to have a look. So I don't know who's been to the room where they're conceived, but I have.
The place
if you're
where the
staying
magic
in
happens.
room 36 in Hotel Inglaterra, hello. But I just remember going to Rome, and it was the first. I think it was probably I grew up in Lebanon. And I think it was the first probably trip to Europe I went, and I must have been only 4 or 5, and my parents loved Rome, obviously. And I just remember it was incredible. I just remember wandering around, and it was so different from Beirut, obviously, and it was just everything about it. I remember going to a fountain where you had to rub a wild boar's nose and throw coins in, and the food, oh my God. I mean, food is a big part of travel for me. That's why I love Lebanon so much. But I remember that was the first time I just gored. We went to a place outside Rome called the Pin Rose. I remember this so vividly. It was pouring with rain. It was like in Tuscany. It was like a Tuscan storm. And we were sitting in this hotel that had a 12-course meal, like incredible meal. And I remember eating this food. And I remember exactly when it was, because it was the Montreal Olympics, so it must have been 1976. And I remember looking out the window, and there was this Tuscan hunter, like it was something out of a painting. He was a hunter, he was on a horse, and he was like riding up this long sort of tree-lined avenue towards the hotel because he wanted to get out of the rain. I just remember all
How
that.
poetic.
It was like honestly, it was like a movie scene.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with Italy, yeah.
And do you still love it now?
I do. I really love being. It really infuriates me. I don't speak enough languages. I speak some languages, but
I think you speak quite a lot of
I
languages.
do, but I don't speak Italian, and it really
do you
annoys
speak
me.
Czech?
I do. Yeah.
What? And how did you end up speaking Czech?
Because I was a diplomat, quite astonishingly.
Yeah. You had quite a few former lives before
Yeah.
comedy.
I got sent off. So I was a runner at MTV, making sandwiches, and I forgot that I'd applied to be an intern at the European Commission when I was at university because I speak languages. Anyway, this thing went through its long bureaucratic process, and I suddenly got a phone call saying, "You've got the job. Can you join us at our delegation," which was the EC's European Commission's embassy in Prague, just after the Velvet Revolution. So I arrived in Prague at one of those times when normally, wherever you go in the world, however much you love it, there's some tosser will come up to you and go, "You just arrived?" And you go, "Yeah, it's amazing." And they'll go, "Yeah, should have been here 2 years ago. Then now it's ruined." There's always, it's ruined, guy, that. This was the only time in the world where I've been, where I knew I was there right here, right now, at the right time. It was 3 months after the Velvet Revolution. Prague still didn't have any advertising. It had no stag parties. Václav Havel was in charge. Lou Reed and Frank Zappa were honorary consuls. Like, it was this crazy utopian time for about 9 months, because all the opposition had been intellectuals, so there were no professional politicians. It was incredible. And I was a diplomat there, and I learned, I sort of got fast-tracked to learn Czech, the most useless language to learn in the world, because even then it was Czechoslovakia, then it split up. So, like, even less people spoke Czech. So the only time I've ever used it since was I was working at Wimbledon, and I tried.
I guess that's what you were going to say.
And I tried to show off to Jana Novotná. So one of my favourite expressions, "Bohužel nerozumím česky," which means unfortunately I don't understand Czech. I love that. Bohužel is such a great word, but yeah.
I love Prague. I think it is one of the best cities in Europe.
I'd hard agree. I mean, obviously, I think it went through a period where it got almost Dubai'd in a way, if that's a term that I can use. It became briefly a sort of bit too stag capital.
Yeah.
But it was not damaged in World War II, which is astonishing.
Yes, it's so intact.
So
and
the
preserved.
view from the castle, the Chladni Chad, looking down, is incredible. They're famous. That castle's famous for a great thing. Do you know what it is?
No.
One of the most sort of imaginative types of execution. So they used to execute people by defenestrating them, throwing them out windows. That's a Czech invention. Well done, Prague.
Defenestration.
Beer and defenestration, yeah.
From the castle itself?
Yeah.
Wow.
They don't use that in the Czech tourist
No,
slogans. It's weird,
that's
But no, I love Prague. So I got there, and it's just this magical city. Like, it's a total medieval, cobbled city, and it was totally unruined, and it was it's magical is the word I use for it.
Every corner you turn is beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah.
And a cool jazz scene as well.
Yeah, I hate jazz.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, Joly hates jazz.
Oh,
that's not me using the third person. It's a joke about the band Johnny Hates Jazz. But yeah, no, I really hate jazz. I did go to, though, so there was a place called Bunker when I got there, and Bunker, this is how Czech they are. Bunker was the old Politburo's nuclear bunker. So the Czechs immediately turned it into a nightclub. And beer was 9p a pint, 9p. And I saw the Velvet Underground on my third week in Prague. I saw because they were like big supporters of Václav Havel. So I find out the Velvet Underground are playing. So I go to the Bunker, and it's like 200 people, this sweaty basement. The Velvet Underground come on stage, and they start playing. And it's only at the end, Sterling Morrison, who I think was the bassist, he goes, "We'd just like to thank someone that we've had a lot of time for, anyway, Václav Havel." And they point, and I look to my left, and Václav Havel is 2 to the left of me in the mosh pit. No. And I'm like, no one will ever believe this. No. It was incredible. Like, it was such a weird, crazy time. I would just like to say, because someone will pick me up on this, it wasn't the full Velvet Underground. It was Sterling Morrison and Mo Tucker, I think. It was half of them, but it was enough.
It was enough for it to count.
Yeah.
So how did you get from that life to comedy and Trigger Happy TV? Like, such a leap.
I mean, it's a really long story, so I'll tell it very quickly. Essentially, I always wanted to get into telly. I got a job at MTV. I thought, this is great. And then suddenly, this thing from my past flew me off to Prague. So I remember going down from making sandwiches at MTV, and I said, "I've got a job." And they said, "Oh, where are you going?" I go, "I'm off to Prague to be a diplomat." So I went to Prague, spent a year just mucking about. People used to come to my office occasionally. I had no idea what I was doing. They'd give me these long things, and I'd nod and say, "I shall refer that back to Brussels," and then just throw a file in the cupboard, never do anything. When I came back from Prague, it looked really good on the CV, like, diplomat in Prague. And so with that, I got a job in Parliament. I got a job for a guy called Andrew Roth, who made Roth's parliamentary profiles, because I'm a political nerd. I'm not political. I don't want to be a politician, but I love being in the thick of it. And then I got a job at ITN as a producer on a really nerdy political program called House to House. And I spent 2 years in Westminster hanging around, and I realised that, because it's funny now, because all the people I work with there, I can see them where they are now, 30 years later. So you sort of think that's where I would be, like that. But I just knew that wasn't me. I'd never wanted to get up early or wear a suit. Those were my two things. And so in the end, I got fired from ITN because I was interviewing David Mellor, the then culture secretary, and I got some people in the background to play football, and they were supposed to pass me the ball, but instead they kicked it, and it smashed David Mellor in the face, which I thought was what the country wanted. And ITN basically realised I was mucking about. They fired me, and I wanted to make political documentaries, so I sent my CV to people like Michael Cockerell and stuff, and one of them, by chance, went to this production company that was making a show called Mark Thomas Comedy Product. And that was like an early Michael Moore satire show where we were taking on MPs. And I was a researcher on that. And, you know, day two were like taking weird things through McDonald's drive-thrus and setting up MPs. And I just thought, this is me.
So much fun.
Yeah. So when that finished, I went to a Paramount comedy channel and I started taking on Cool Britannia. I started putting like Millennium Domes in Peter Mandelson's garden. I was on to him very early. We used to follow him round London. He was known as the Prince of Darkness, and we used to follow him around as we used to follow him as a fan club. I'd dress as the devil, and we'd have Frankenstein holding signs saying "We love you," and we got on the front page of every newspaper. And so that made a lot of noise. And Channel 4 saw it and said, "Oh, we like what you're doing. Would you like to do it?" And I said, "Yes, I would."
Yeah.
And I want to make this clever satire program. And the woman that found me said, "I've just made Brass Eye of Chris Morris. I can't. I don't want to go through more court stuff. Is there any way you could do what you're doing, but just make it funny, like about nothing?"
Yeah.
And that's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because otherwise I would have made a niche satire program.
Yeah.
But Trigger Happy was just, the only rule was like, does this make me and Sam laugh? And that's all it was.
What a joy.
Yeah.
And it was such a phenomenon, sold
crazy.
in 80 countries around the
85,
world.
I
85
think.
countries.
I don't know, just make it up now, but I think it is 85, yeah.
And how quickly did your life change? And where...
Overnight.
Was it overnight?
Yeah, but although it's weird, it's actually the 25th anniversary now, so I'm doing a tour,
congrats.
about it. And one of the reasons we're doing the 25th anniversary is because I genuinely, at the time, it all happened. It was literally like, it happened, it was a hit, everything went crazy for 4 years, and then I was like excreted from show business. Like, it's kind of like, and it was like
such a weird industry.
And I was like, what was that? Like, you know, so it's only looking back that I can start to appreciate it. But I remember the moment I realized my life changed was the first Trigger Happy went out on the 14th of January 2000. I remember that because Victor Lewis Smith, who was my favorite TV critic in the Evening Standard, wrote, the single greatest review of a show I've ever read. And he said I'd turned the humble practical joke into an art form, which I loved. Oh. He also said, without doubt, the greatest comedy show of the millennium so far. Now, we were 14 days into the millennium, so that was fine, but now I just take it so far off. But anyway, so it went out on Friday, 14th of Jan, and the Monday I was on a train, I think I was going to Oxford, and that ringtone went off, and no one knew I was on the train. 3 people stood up in the carriage and went, "Hello, I'm on a train," and I was like, wow. Holy shit, what has happened?
Yeah.
And I had no rule book, and I didn't deal with it very well. I wasn't very good at being like famous. Well, I like being famous, but not that level of fame.
Yeah, it
was
must
crazy.
have been intense.
It was because what I liked was I was always a sort of outsider. I was a little sort of punky idiot. I was like a yapping, snapping at the heels, and suddenly we were the establishment. We were like this big hit, tall poppy stuff. I hated that.
Do you think that's why, when it comes to your travel choices, then, that you'd like to go for the more obscure destinations?
Not at all. I just don't. I don't do beaches, and
You don't do beaches.
Well, no, not really.
You're not a fly and flop guy from time to time.
No. I like jumping off cliffs is my favourite thing, into rivers.
Really?
Yeah, and lakes. Like in Canada, I do a lot of that, and I like travels with a purpose. I like travelling to see something. So, and I'm very politically minded. Dark Tourist was all about this. There's a weird thing where I think, why do I want to go to, Chernobyl? I went to Chernobyl, it's really interesting, but why do I want to go to Vietnam or Cambodia to see the killing fields? And there's something odd. I sort of feel where something extraordinary has happened in life, it sort of hangs in the air, and it's a way of sort of touching history.
Yeah.
So I can't explain it. I'm fascinated by going to places, especially places that had an effect on me growing up. Chernobyl being one. Cambodia, I remember when Lebanon, the Civil War was going on, our rival for the headlines was the sort of whole, the Cambodian killing field stuff. And Cambodia's very similar, an ex-French colony, a place where it's beautiful. The food is amazing, incredible ruins, but this place went crazy. And now when you went to Cambodia, because they killed all the intellectuals, anyone sort of smart over 50 thought, well, what the hell were you doing? You must have been part of it. And I ended up going to a war crimes, I bluffed my way into a war crimes trial, which was the weirdest thing ever. I was in Phnom Penh, and my guide said, there's a war crimes trial, and I've been reading this book called The Gate. It's an incredible book about this awful man that used to smash babies against trees, and awful. Wow. And he'd finally been caught, and I'd just been reading about this guy, and it was the most evil man I'd ever read about, and he was being tried.
It was his trial.
It is being tried. So, and this is the kind of thing I love when I'm writing a travel book. It kind of was just like it all fell into place. So I end up going into the war crimes trial, and I can't get in because I'm wearing shorts, and you have to wear trousers in war crimes trials. I didn't know that. And so the guard outside gives me his trousers, but he's Cambodian, and he's about the size of my child. So I'm squeezing myself into these tiny trousers. So I'm really tight, and I waddle into the war crimes trial, and I sit, and there's this sort of bench of judges, and there's really thick glass, and then there's a kind of people watching, and I look like, where is this monster? And I notice him, and it's just this meek-looking man sitting there in a suit. He looked like a tiny accountant. And it really reminded me of that famous quote about Adolf Eichmann, who was the Nazi who went off to Argentina, and Israel kidnapped and put on trial in Jerusalem. And, you know, this man was so evil, yet he looked like an accountant. And that's where the term the banality of evil comes from, which is just incredible. You expect monsters to look like monsters, and they don't.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where I'm in this place thinking, what am I doing here? Like, I'm a squirrel, you know, like, why am I in a war crimes tribunal? And Deutsch, this guy was called Deutsch, he turns and looks, and our eyes met, and it was one of the most astonishing moments. You just think, I've genuinely looked into the face of probably the most evil man I've ever met. So it's things like that.
It's just
it's not your normal family holiday.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
hey kids, we're going to a war crimes tribunal.
no, but like when you are choosing destinations that fit within that remit, are you looking for experiences like that alongside like discovering the kind of beauty of the country or the kind of food culture or music culture, or are you particularly interested in the kind of weirdnesses of it?
I'm definitely interested in the weirdnesses, and I'm always looking. So my books are normally themed. So as a great plug for all my books, I'll start off Dark Tourist, for instance. It was like I want to go to places that you'd not normally go on holiday with. So I went skiing in Iran because that just feels weird. But you can ski an hour outside Tehran, incredible ski. The Shah was really into skiing, and he built 2 massive ski resorts, really good skiing. And it's just crazy. You're up there. But when I got there, you can't ski together because it's Iran. So there's a big fence down the middle.
What, men on one side?
Men on one side, women on the other. But when you get to the top, everyone was mixing, and I said to my guide, why? And he said, mullahs don't snowboard. It was amazing. So Iran was great, and then I went on a coach trip around North Korea, because you think no one goes to North Korea. It's the most insane place I ever went. I went to...
I'd love to ask you more about North Korea.
We can ask about lots.
Yeah. I mean, so what do you reckon was the single most bizarre experience you had while you were there?
So North Korea is like... I think one of the problems with travel is that travel is about taking yourself outside your comfort zone, going to something unusual. And I think we're so globalized now, we're so sort of homogenized that it's very difficult to go anywhere, really, where you're not a mile from a Starbucks.
Yeah.
North Korea is the last bastion. It's the closest you'll come to space travel. It's so, even if you look at a satellite image of the Korean Peninsula from space, like South Korea is all lit up. North Korea is just dark. It's just not on the grid. So I went there because I was a foreign correspondent for The Independent at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and I met a guy who took organised tours to North Korea. That's the only way you can go in.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to go in as a journalist, but technically I wasn't a journalist. I was, but I was also a man who dressed as a squirrel. So I went in as Squirrel Man. And the irony is that the people going to North Korea are the most hardened travellers who want to go somewhere no one's been before.
Final frontier.
Yeah, and they're independent travellers whose idea of hell is a package tour.
Yeah.
And yet they're on a coach trip because you're so controlled. And every day you would go to the dullest things on earth. But because you're in North Korea, it's amazing. Like the first morning, we went to the Museum of Agricultural Scythes and Lathes. Yeah, like a whole morning.
Wow.
But it was amazing because it was so shit.
And
it was fantastic.
It was just so weird.
Yeah, and then an afternoon just looking at the dear leader's mother's tomb. You're just like, that's nice. But North Korea is weird for so many reasons. It's like I've been to a lot of places under dictatorships and authoritarian places, and once you get away from the official guides, people will come up and talk to you honestly. North Korea was like,
they don't do that.
It was like a cult. Like
Yeah.
everyone there. I went. They put you in the middle of Pyongyang in a hotel on an island to control you, and the only thing on the island, there were two things. There was a cinema which we weren't allowed to go into, but had just hosted the first international Pyongyang film festival. Now they couldn't decide what film would be allowed. So finally, the only film they thought they could allow was Mr. Bean. Yeah, Mr. Bean gets everywhere, like whatever you go. So they played Mr. Bean the movie, but just in case people didn't understand it, they had a guy at the side of the cinema with a loudhailer explaining in Korean what was going on. And then next to that was a 9-hole golf course, the only golf course in North Korea. And when I got there was a glass case and a cushion and a golf ball on it. I knew what was coming. And I said, oh, what's that? And they said, oh, the dear leader just came the other day and he'd never played golf before, but you'll never guess what? 9 holes in one. And they say that and you're like, come on. And they go, oh, yes. And you go, oh, well done. It's crazy.
So but did you press them for, like you say, do you say like, oh, come on? Or because you're there, do you feel like you have to kind of play along?
It's very difficult on so many levels. Yes, you definitely press them to an extent, and then you realise they believed it. Or if they didn't believe it, they're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Secondly, you were told very clearly that if you did something to disrespect North Korea or did something bad, that your guide would suffer the consequences of it. That's incredible pressure. Now, as it turned out, I hated our guide. He was a deeply unpleasant man that was definitely working for the government. So I thought, fuck you. But so I don't know if writing my book did anything to him, but it's no loss to the North Korean people. But yeah, the whole place is so complex on every level. You're not quite sure what's real or not. You got on the Pyongyang tube, and we went 2 stops, and it was perfectly clean. Everyone was standing there. You've got propaganda blaring. It's like a Bond film, constantly blaring out. And then we went a 3rd stop, and the guy who took me, Simon, who'd been like 80 times, was like, oh my God, that's the first time we've been more than 2 stops. Wow. And before that, they thought the whole thing was a showpiece, and that there were only 2 stops, and there wasn't an underground system. It's such a...
Because I remember Michael Palin did his documentary about it, and he went to that...
later than me, but yes.
Yeah, later than you, exactly.
Yeah. Johnny come lately.
He went to that airport, didn't he? And it was empty.
The whole
there
place,
were no... It was like a pretend airport.
But the whole place is pretend and facade. It's just really, really weird. We went down to the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone, and you get to that famous place where there's a hut, which is over the border, and there's a table in the middle of the hut. And so when people have official meetings, they go into the hut, and they don't cross the border, but they stare at each other and chat. And then on each side of the cement barrier, which you can hop over, both sides choose their tallest soldiers, and they come face to face staring at each other. So anyway, I'm there like watching this whole thing, and I look up, and there's an observation tower in South Korea, and I can see American soldiers with cameras with zoom lenses taking our pictures. And I thought, oh, Christ, this is going to make my next entry to America. It's like Osama Bin Laden born in Beirut, and then they just slip this photo, and this was you in North Korea, sir. No, I think it's the most crazy place I've ever been in the world.
That sounds so fascinating.
Yeah, it is totally fascinating, but then you've got to be aware that you're in this country, which you're finding fascinating, but you can leave, and these people can't. And so part of you thinking, should I be enjoying this? I mean, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the total surreality of surrealness of being in this sort of place. That didn't mean I was gloating or I was pleased people lived under it, but I think you have to experience it. You have to talk about it.
Completely,
yeah. And I think, my books are funny, but they're not taking the piss. Like, they're funny because travel is inherently funny. There are lots of funny things, but I think they also make really serious points. Yeah. And I think you can be funny about a place without being disrespectful or not taking it seriously.
Yeah. Well, chapter 3, moving on, is a place where you learnt the most about yourself.
Jesus. Where did I learn the most about myself? I don't think I've learned anything about myself, really. I suppose, actually, this will be a good opportunity to plug my new book.
Okay.
Because that's what it's about. My new book is called The Soul Tourist in Desperate Pursuit of Happiness. And I thought, firstly, my book before that was on conspiracy theories. I hung out with conspiracy theorists around the world and have spent 2 years arguing with these critical thinkers. And I just had enough. And I needed like a sort of a break. I needed something fresh. And I just thought wellness is such a big thing, and all these people going off, eat, pray, love, all that kind of stuff. And I thought actually that'd be, and again, if we're talking about themes to my books, I always try and think of something, a theme. And so I thought, okay, well, if I did a book on wellness and people going off to find happiness, where would people go? The obvious one, India. Like, it's the first thing, everyone goes off to India. So I went to Rishikesh, which is where yoga was invented. More excitingly for me, and this is again what I love, is that I went for that, but actually ended up in the ashram where the Beatles went in 1968 and wrote the whole White Album. Dear Prudence is about Prudence, Mia Farrow's sister Prudence, who was there and took her singing, her meditation so seriously, she wouldn't come out. Dear Prudence, won't you come out and play? Like, all that was incredible.
So cool.
Then I went to an Ayurvedic place in Bangalore, and Bangalore is like the sort of Silicon Valley of India. So that was really interesting, because the contrast between this kind of new modern India with all these Indians just doing incredibly well with like Silicon Valley type stuff, and then full of idiot Westerners like me sort of trying to do Ayurvedic stuff. To me, that whole thing was like being in Guantanamo Bay. 2 men tied me to a table and poured oil on my forehead for 4 hours. I mean, it was hell.
Drinking butter, is it?
Drinking butter.
Or ghee,
having your eyelids flushed. I mean,
did
honestly,
did it make you feel better?
No. It made me. I escaped. I actually broke out after 7 days.
Were you going into this pursuit of wellness like with a kind of with a critical eye, or were you actually trying to?
So again, I think I was doing it in my way. I was going in with a generally skeptical. This is bollocks. I'm an ex-goth. I'm a grumpy misanthrope. But deep down, with a slight feeling of like, oh, it'd be lovely if one of these actually worked. I went to Denmark. It's often named as the happiest country in the world. I found out they've actually got a big PR department in their government which is about maintaining that. And they rival Finland, who go against each other. Finland has a high suicide rate as well.
Yeah, well, because they're in perpetual darkness half the year. Yeah.
I have to say, I think Denmark is one of the greatest countries I've been to. I mean, I love Copenhagen. I went to Aarhus, which everyone goes in the middle of our street, which is the second. Denmark have just got it right. There's something incredible about them. Even weird things, like their Jewish population in World War II. They were the only country that saved their entire Jewish population. There's something decent about Denmark.
Yeah.
But they're so decent, they're so nice, that I don't quite trust it. I think they're all doing terrible things.
Behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors. No one can be that nice. But you know what, I really like Denmark. I checked myself into a Benedictine monastery. I again did a runner. One of the things I really came away from, that the secret of happiness for me is a Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City's quote, which is, I've got to the age where I really don't want to spend more than an hour anywhere I don't want to be. So whether you call it a French exit or an Irish exit, which is where you just slip out, that is my happiness. Like, it's just thinking, right, enough of this, I'm out.
Yeah.
So a lot of the book is me running away from things. But I loved it. It was interesting.
And was there one that actually was the most profound for you in terms of, was there anything that gave you a perspective shift or?
Yeah, so the very weird thing was I was talking to my neighbour, Dan, you know, having been all around the world. You see, this is like, it all comes back. And I was talking to my neighbour, Dan, in Cheltenham, and I was telling him about all these places I'd been. And he said, have you read Siddhartha? And I said, I've not read Siddhartha. Siddhartha's a book by Hermann Hesse. And it's basically a book. He said, read it, and I'm going to take you fly fishing. And he said, that is happiness. So I thought, I don't want to read a book called Siddhartha, and I certainly don't want to go fly fishing. It's full of sort of posh country twats that I don't like, and I don't want to kill a fish, even though I'll eat it, because I'm a hypocrite. But anyway, I read Siddhartha. It's tiny. And basically, it's a book which essentially is quite a simple parable where his kid grows up by a river. He goes off to become a holy man, and he just hates it and runs away, French exit. Then he goes to the city and gets hooked up with a rich courtesan and gets very rich. He hates that. And he ends up back at the river and realizes that's where he's happy. And I thought, that's weird, because I'm back in Cheltenham in a river, because I went with Dan.
Yeah. And
I loved it. I just found, I didn't catch anything, so I didn't have to be unhappy about killing the fish. but I found it so... I was so engrossed in what I was doing. I was standing in the middle of the river. You're kind of... you're embraced by this river, and you're sort of flicking this reel constantly. It's almost like you're concentrating on it so much. I'm like, well,
it's like meditative.
This is meditation, basically, but they're just not... so I understood all the spiritual things I did, but it's all that spiritual bollocks you have to put around it. You just need to concentrate on something, be with people you love, have good chat, be happy. Like, it's not that difficult. So weirdly, I did find myself riffing on Siddhartha and Hermann Hesse, standing in the middle of a river in Wales, fly fishing, and I thought, wow, this is deep. Not the river, the book. Yeah.
Chapter 4 is the big question. Your all-time favourite destination. Ooh. What do you think you would pick today?
Okay, well, I can't do that because this is like my favourite record. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cheat, and I'm not a royalist. I think the royal family should be abolished. But I do think the royal family have one thing right. They move on the season. They move between 4 places: Sandringham, Balmoral, Windsor Castle, and Buckingham Palace, I think. So you move. Mm-hmm. So my family always play this thing. If you could have 4 places, you have a summer place, a winter place, a city place, and a wild card.
Love it.
So I'm going to play that, if that's all right.
That sounds like your new podcast, Dom. That's what you should do.
That's quite good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't have a podcast. You know,
that's what I mean. That you're like, that's your next.
But
thing.
my podcast would be "I am the only man in Britain without a podcast."
Yeah, exactly.
Because Britain really needs another podcast. Yeah. So okay. So and again, this changes a lot. But at the moment, city is Copenhagen.
Okay.
I think Copenhagen is the greatest city I've been to. I love Copenhagen on so many levels. My summer place is Muskoka, which are lakes north of Toronto. And that, if you asked all my family, I'm married to a Canadian, if you asked all my family, where's our happy place? It's Muskoka. We go there in the summer, you rent a cottage, and cottage can mean small cottage to Kennebunkport stuff. Yeah. And Canada has more lakes, I think, than anywhere else in the world. But these 3 lakes, Lake Muskoka, Lake Rosso, and Lake Joe, are massive. And they're interlinked, and they are peppered with islands. And they've become, over the years, quite celeb-based, slightly ruined now. But the Beckhams went there, and you think, right, that's it, I'm not going anymore. But it is still great. And we'd go up there, park the car, get on the boat, and we wouldn't go anywhere but by boat for a month. It's like swallows and Amazons. The kids would run off all day. Oh. It's like going back to 1950s, not in a racial political way, but just everything's free. I love Muskoka, so that's our number one place.
So do people, if you go there, do people typically hire a place, rent a place?
Yes, if you went to Muskoka, you'd rent a cottage, and you can get these beautiful cottages, and then the cottage always has a boathouse. The boathouse is normally the same size as the cottage, and you can sleep in it, but it always has a terrace that you can jump off into the lake. And we like
the lake
jumping.
Is warm enough to swim in the summer?
Oh my God, but this is what people don't understand about that area, like Muskoka. So that's an hour and a half north of Toronto, and it's on the same latitude as Saint-Tropez. Canada, why Canada works, is it has seasons that are absolutely defined, and it's 35 degrees every day.
Amazing.
June, July, August, it's perfect. It's amazing. Canada in the summer is heaven.
Yeah.
So I love that. Winter place, Zermatt. I'm obsessed with Zermatt. Lots of reasons. I filmed Trigger Happy there.
Yeah.
I just like Zermatt. I'm Swiss originally. Joly is a Swiss Huguenot name. Zermatt doesn't allow cars. Unfortunately, it's been ruined by Russians. Like, Russians came in and made everything way too expensive. But hopefully they're all banned now, so maybe it's better. But I just love Zermatt. I think everything about Zermatt's great. And then my wild card always changes. But I think it's Morocco. Like, I would love to have like a house in the Atlas Mountains, I think, somewhere like that. So there you go.
Oh, what a great
But I could change that all the time.
House in the Atlas Mountains. That would be really good. Are you a big trekker? Are you a big walker?
Yeah, I'm not a big trekker, but I did a book where I walked across Lebanon, and I kind of got into that. Like, we did 27 days walking across Lebanon, and I'm I originally called it the Hezbollah Hiking Club, which is a great name, but then I had to change the name because it wasn't allowed to be sold in about 6 countries in the Middle East. So we changed it to the Downhill Hiking Club because I went with 2 friends, and we were all of us very unfit and not great hikers, and we kept being told by our guides, oh, no, downhill is much harder than uphill. And And we kept saying, it absolutely is not. Uphill, you're just like, at that. And then if we go downhill, we were so happy.
Yeah.
And they go, no, downhill, very bad for your knees. And I go, no, it's great. So that's why I called ourselves the Downhill Hiking Club. Also, because our lives were on the downhill as well. So, yeah, I love the Atlas Mountains because I love that you're near Marrakesh, which, although, again, has been slightly ruined, you're near a place called Taroudant. You can go to Ouarzazate. So I love deserts. So you're in a sort of almost Italian type mountain region, but you're like an hour from the desert, an hour from the sea. I kind of like Moroccan food. It's not like Lebanese, but I like it. I love Morocco. There's something very special about it.
There's a real buzz about
Yeah.
it. So chapter 5 then, Dom, is your hidden gem. So this is a place that you love that maybe my listeners don't know so much about. And I feel as though you're perhaps one of my best placed guests for hidden gems because you're always seeking out.
Tell you my hidden gem, am I?
Can you share one?
Well, no, because I don't want you all coming to it. I hate you. No, they're not hidden gems. I don't know. I'm off to Lamu, actually, just on Sunday. I haven't been to Lamu, but Lamu is somewhere I've always wanted to go. But if you're a proper traveller, you probably know about Lamu. It's a Muslim island off Kenya, as part of Kenya. And that's kind of lovely. But I haven't been there yet, so I can't really talk about it. Where do I love? I'll tell you where I really love, actually, and people don't go, is Sarajevo. I mean, again, I went there for a weird reason, because I'm obsessed with assassinations. When I did the Dark Tourist book, I did a thing called Assassination Vacation, where I went on a road trip around America. Weirdly, my wife didn't join me, where I went to various assassination sites, JFK, and I don't know, I found that, again, so fascinating.
Because, as you said, that kind of
like
connecting with history.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I find that really interesting. And when, in 2014, it was the centenary of Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated in Sarajevo, and that obviously was the thing that supposedly started First World War.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by that. I'd read a book by Tim Butcher called The Trigger. I can't remember if I'd read it before I went or after. If you haven't read it, I think Tim Butcher's a fantastic travel writer. He wrote Blood River, but The Trigger is a great book, and he follows the whole journey of Gavrilo Princip coming to Sarajevo and doing the assassination. And so I went to Sarajevo really for that, to stand on that corner, because there's a great story behind that. You know, there's about 6 of them go to Sarajevo. They know Archduke Franz Ferdinand's going to go up the side of the river in a car, and they're all dotted along waiting. One's got a sort of bomb, and the other's got a... They're all waiting to kill him. First guy throws a bomb. It bounces off the car, blows up, damages the car, but doesn't kill anyone. And so the driver puts his foot down and roars past all the other assassins who are a bit rubbish, you know.
Yeah.
And he goes and he's supposed to give a speech, and he gives quite a quick and rude speech about he doesn't really appreciate the hospitality of Sarajevo. And when he comes back out, and all the assassins have kind of gone, and the main guy, Gavrilo Princip, goes to a cafe and starts drinking because he's so depressed. He's such a rubbish assassin. And when he comes out of the town hall, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he was supposed to go round a tour of the old city. And they just say, no, we're just going to get you straight back to the railway station. But no one tells his driver. So they drive down the quay, and the driver takes a turn into the old city. And so they tap him on the shoulder and go, no, we're not going this way. So he stops the car. Mm-hmm. And the car stops right opposite the cafe where Gavrilo Princip is sitting. And so Gavrilo Princip literally just picks up his gun and kills him and starts the First World War. So technically, sat-nav would have prevented First World War. But there is one fascinating fact about it that blows my mind. There is a photograph, you look it up, and it's the last photograph ever taken of Franz Ferdinand. It's a black and white photograph. There's women standing with parasols, and his car is just, you can see it's taken the turn he's like 10 seconds away from being killed. And you can see the number plate. And I looked at the number plate and I was like, it can't be. It just can't be. So I look at it again and I can't believe it because I think so many things are Photoshop. So I find out where the car he was shot in was, and it's in the Krieg Museum in Vienna. So I go to Vienna to see this car and I look at the number plate, and it is. And the number plate on his car, right? So this is the man whose assassination started the First World War in 2014. The number plate on his car is A111118, 11th of 18, which is the last day of the First World War. Isn't that insane? And that's not like made up or anything. It's like one of those crazy facts. So that's why I love
Wow.
that. But Sarajevo.
Wow.
So I went to Sarajevo for that. But Sarajevo, incredible. So I drove up from Split and I drove through Mostar, which is a fantastically interesting place. Really got badly hit in the war. It has this bridge that spans both religious sides of the place. People dive off the bridge. There's a Mostar diving club. It's incredible. And then you keep going and you get to Sarajevo. And Sarajevo is just fascinating. It reminded me of Beirut. You've got churches and minarets next to each other. You've got the remains of I think it's the 86 Winter Olympics up where people used to use the bobsleigh run for snipers' nests. There's a lot of Beirut about it.
Yeah.
It was just a mix of cultures. It was like where the East met West and stopped. No one goes to Sarajevo. It's an incredible place.
Oh, that's a really, really good tip.
But don't go to Sarajevo because I like it.
So, and that's a really good road trip, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I love a road trip. Road trips are like my life. Like I love road trips. And
what's your favourite ever road trip route?
Well, I mean, like desert road trips, I love. I have to say, America is made for road trips, just because the whole place is built. I mean, there was a moment when they built all those, Roosevelt, FDR built all these interstates as part of his New Deal just to keep people busy, and they had these cars, and so all these things were set up by the side of the road. Things like, the world's biggest ball of twine, or a redwood tree you can drive through. Like, America's really thought about driving stuff. So I do love America. A great road trip. I took my kids when my son, who's now 21, is so annoyed because he was just too young. I think he was 10, but my daughter was old enough to enjoy it. And we drove from the Cotswolds to Istanbul and back, but we did it in different ways. So we kind of went, Amsterdam, Berlin, Prague, I think Bucharest, Bulgaria. And then on the way back, we came through Thessaloniki and we went through Greece. And then we took a boat, which took us all the way up into Venice to arrive in Venice by boat and then driving back through Europe. So that's
so cool. What kind of inspired you to do that?
Just wanderlust. Like,
really?
I wanted, when growing up as a kid, we used to drive from Beirut to London once a year and back. And I just remember that as a kid, and I wanted my kids to share that. I've always, I taught my daughter all the capitals of the world. That was the first thing we did to bond, and she's still so pleased with herself when she goes to pub quizzes, and she can just get it. And we have all these weird, mnemonics to remember them and stuff like that. Capital of Pakistan, Islamabad? No, Islamagud, and terrible things that are like family jokes. So travel's a really big part of it. And then my son now, who's so annoyed we did all that travel when he was too young, he's now a complete travel head, going off to Kyrgyzstan and weird places. So it's in our blood, definitely.
So our penultimate chapter, chapter 6, is the place that you'd never go back to.
Swindon.
Why?
I'm banned.
Officially banned.
Yeah,
what did you do?
I'm actually banned from 2 places. I'm banned from Swindon, and I'm banned from 3 places, I think. Swindon, Weston-super-Mare, and Hastings.
Swindon, all in the UK?
Yeah. So Swindon, when I first moved to the Cotswolds, people always used to say, people always use that expression, looks like Beirut, and it kind of annoys me. It's a bit lazy, because Beirut looks amazing. And so I realised that I'd sort of started to use Swindon as a sort of, I don't know, kind of, what's the word? A target. Anytime I'd say a bit like, not as bad as Swindon and stuff.
Like Slough?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So when I go off around the world, people would say, where's the most dangerous place you've been? And actually, not joking, I'd say, well, I've been nowhere more dangerous than chucking out time in a market town in England. It's true, there's more violence there.
Yeah.
And I'd often say Swindon. So Swindon banned me. But then I'm banned from Weston-super-Mare and Hastings, both peer-related incidents. Weston-super-Mare, I went and I was filming something in Weston-super-Mare, and I wrote a column where I wasn't that nice about it. And the mayor of Weston-super-Mare, who I presume is called the Weston-super-Mare mayor, he went crazy. He was so angry. And they had some event, their pier burnt down, I think, and they had a rebuilding thing, and they had a charity day. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy. It was all Dom Joly themed. They had a slug race where all the slugs were named after me. And then it ended with a life-size effigy of me being set fire to by the mayor. I'm like, who is this guy? It's crazy, yeah. But my best one is Hastings. And I kind of, it's probably fair. I woke up one morning and I read on Twitter that Hastings Pier had burnt down. And I've got like Twitter Tourette's. I just post stuff without thinking. And I posted what I thought was a funny thing, and it didn't go down well at all. And all I said was, had a smashing night out in Hastings last night, got really pissed, can't remember much, but woke up smelling of petrol. That's all it was. And the Hastings local newspaper just splashed, sick comedian boasts of burning down pier. So it's kind of, I don't get very excited about going to places in England. And which is weird because I'm on a 100-date tour. See the plug there?
Yeah.
So I have to go to all these places. And actually, I do enjoy it. And I wrote a book called Such Miserable Weather, where I sort of, you're never a tourist in your own country. And I thought, well, I don't really get excited about traveling around. And so I did make an effort. And I went on a road trip, just going to all the sort of places you probably wouldn't want to go to, like the Pencil Museum in Keswick. Don't know if you've been there. That's 3 minutes of your life.
Is that somewhere we should be adding to our bucket
3
list?
minutes of your life you'll never get back. The British Lawnmower Museum in Southport. Have you been there?
No.
That's quite good if you like lawnmowers. My favourite bit is they have a picture of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin in his day was clearly a bit of a dude, yeah, and now he'd be in Dubai with a Lamborghini, but that wasn't on option there. So he was wearing Victorian shades, and he'd got the latest lawnmower. It's like a horse-drawn lawnmower, and the Lawnmower Museum went crazy about this. There's like 10 lines of technical bump about this lawnmower, and then right at the bottom, and this is what I love about being English, it just said, also wrote origin of the species. So I don't know. So I'm rude about England, but I love England as well, and I really enjoyed finding weird places to go to and stuff. So I don't really hate anywhere. Nowhere's really given me a bad memory. I had a very bad time in Nigeria. I found that quite tricky, but I think it's a sort of lazy thing that I don't really know Nigeria well enough. I was there for a day. It's certainly the most times I've been asked to. The corruption, even at the airport level, was just insane.
Right. Yeah.
But I kind of like the experience. But yeah, it's not. I'm not rushing to go there
back.
again.
Yeah. How do they enforce being banned from Swindon? Is there an enforcement?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I got a letter from the mayor of the Western-super-Mare mayor telling me in official terms that and it was quite formal. It said, for the rest of your natural life.
Natural life?
Yeah. It sort of felt like I was being sentenced to death.
But for your supernatural life, you could go back and haunt them.
I was not allowed back within. But I don't know. I don't know if they have like guards looking for me. I think I'm doing a gig in Western-super-Mare, so we shall see. I don't think it's taken seriously. I think the mayor's gone, so maybe that's right.
Well, thank goodness. Otherwise, what would have happened at that gig?
Who knows? Well, it'd be great. Come along and see.
Oh, Dom, it's just been so fun chatting.
Thank
we are
you.
on to the final chapter of your Travel Diaries, chapter 7, and that is a destination at the top of your travel bucket list. Where haven't you been that you'd love to go?
So Algeria. I'm obsessed with Algeria. I mean, beyond obsessed. Like, I like Morocco, but Morocco's kind of over, and I've done Morocco. I've done everywhere Morocco. Algeria, I'm obsessed with for so many reasons. I think growing up, Algiers was very similar to Beirut, and I had cousins who left Beirut and went to Algiers. So Algiers is this, French colonial city. In fact, Algeria wasn't a colony. Algeria was a department of France. It was part of France. So Algiers itself has this amazing French-style town, not unlike Beirut. But then right behind it, it has the Medina, which is the full North African experience. And then Algeria itself is incredible, an extraordinarily massive country, mostly desert, but it has a sort of 100-mile belt from the sea in, which is a bit like Lebanon. It has pine trees and it's green and it's beautiful. It has this incredible place, and I'm going to forget its name, which is ridiculous, but it's an almost perfectly preserved Roman city in the middle of the desert, and because it's so dry, it's been completely preserved. I really want to go there.
Oh, what is it called? It's the one that went that Simon Calder talked about.
Yes,
that went viral on this on my Instagram.
Oh damn! Yeah, he's incredible. I've put pictures of it on my Instagram before. I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, it looks amazing.
And then I want to go to Oran. Is a place Oran, which is where in World War II we sank the French fleet rather than like giving it to the Nazis. So it's got a historical thing there. My favourite film ever is called The Battle of Algiers, and it's a famous film made in the 50s about the War of Independence, which is, in its sense, was a fascinating time in history of fighting the French. And a lot of the people that were the real revolutionaries are in that film. But it's such a fascinating time, first sort of times when suicide bombs were used, and like it's incredible. I'm so obsessed with Algeria on every level. So yeah, and I mean, lots of places. Constantine, which is this incredible like hilltop city with a bridge going. And then someone contacted me in Constantine and said, "Please come to my place." And then Timgad, which is this just the place I so want to go to. I fly a hot air balloon, and I want to fly a hot air balloon over Timgad. It's this almost perfectly preserved Roman city, like the ruins of it, but it's incredible. Like I don't know why Algeria. I'm just all about Algeria.
You're just drawn to it.
Yeah, and I feel it's on the cusp of about to being the new hit place, and I want to get there before them. Yeah.
I hope you get there soon, Dom. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been such a joy chatting to you. Those were your travel diaries.
Thank you very much.